let's dive in. Today, we're tackling a place that's way more than just a dot on a map. We're talking India.
Yeah, and you've really given us a lot to work with here. Tons of sources on, like, everything.
Seriously, from geography and history to even, like, tech and food. It's a lot.
It is. And what really gets me is India's this blend of ancient and modern, spiritual and kind of chaotic all at once.
That's a good way to put it. Like, where do we even start?
Well, I guess with the basics, just how massive India is. It's the 7th biggest country on the planet.
A seventh. Wow, I didn't realize it was that high up there.
And with over 1.4 billion people. It's the most populous, too.
That's hard to even picture.
It really is. But even beyond the sheer size, it's the diversity that blows my mind.
Yeah, the sources mentioned something like over 2,000 dialects. Right?
You got it. And geographically, it's crazy varied. You've got the Himalayas up north, those huge mountains.
I mean, everyone's heard of the Himalayas, but to think they're part of India.
Right. And then there's the Deccan Plateau in the center, this vast area.
Okay, starting to get the picture of just how big this place is.
And we can't forget the south, all lush and full of spices.
Oh, yeah, the food. We'll get to that. But first, so we have these regions plus New Delhi, the capital.
Exactly. And Delhi itself is a mix of, like, Mughal architecture, but also super modern stuff.
It's almost like India has all the best travel destinations in one place.
That's a great way to think about it. One day you could be trekking in the snowy mountains, next you're at a bustling city with ancient temples.
That is a serious contrast.
And that's just the tip of the iceberg, really. Thinking about where India sits on the map.
It's got a lot of neighbors.
Tons.
Yeah.
Pakistan, China, Nepal, Bangladesh, all with their own cultures and history impacting India.
So throughout history, it's been this kind of crossroads.
Exactly. Trade routes, cultural exchange, but also, unfortunately, sometimes conflict.
Right. And speaking of that, one phrase really stuck with me from the sources. Beauty and chaos coexist.
That is a good one, and it seems to fit India perfectly.
On one hand, you've got these amazing landscapes, the architecture we were talking about, that vibrant culture.
And on the other, you can't ignore the challenges. Poverty, the pollution in some areas, sanitation issues.
Yeah, it's important to look at both sides of it.
Absolutely. And it's not about judging, but understanding. Like the British colonial period, that had a huge impact on India's sanitation systems.
So even today, they're dealing with the consequences of that.
It's one example, but it shows how we got to dig deeper than just surface level observations.
For sure. So we've kind of set the scene geographically and historically.
I think so. Where to next?
Well, you know me. I'm always thinking about food.
Of course. And Indian cuisine is a world of its own.
Famous for those spices, all the different flavors.
Absolutely. And did you know India has the biggest vegetarian population globally?
Really? I guess that makes sense with Hinduism, right?
Exactly. It's not just diet, it's tied into their reverence for cows and their whole worldview.
So food isn't just about what tastes good. It's deeper than that.
In India, it really is. And on that note, the sources also mentioned this crazy street food scene.
Oh yeah, I saw some videos. It looks like an adventure for your taste buds and maybe your stomach.
Well, part of exploring different cultures is trying things that are out of your comfort zone, even if it's a little chaotic, right?
Totally. But let's shift gears for a sec. We've got to talk about the architecture.
Oh, yeah, those ancient Buddhist caves, the Hindu temples.
And then, of course, the Mughal era, the stuff like the Taj Mahal.
Each building's basically a story, you know?
You're saying every archway, every column has witnessed history.
That's it. Like
Family.
empires rising and falling, different religions taking root.
I can picture standing before the Qutub Minar, that huge minaret, or the Taj Mahal, just soaking it in.
Those aren't just buildings. They're like art that survived for centuries.
It's like stepping into a history book, but it's real life.
And then we fast forward to modern India.
And we hit Bollywood.
It's not just India's version of Hollywood. It's its own thing entirely.
So much music, dancing, over-the-top storylines.
Huge spectacle. But it's also controversial sometimes. Some say it's moved too far from traditional values.
It's like that tension between old and new is playing out right in front of us.
It is. And then you've got the tech boom on top of it all.
Yeah, Bangalore, the Silicon Valley of Asia.
It's a catchy nickname, but there's substance to it. Bangalore's got this incredibly skilled workforce, the infrastructure to support tech.
So it's not just luck, they've got what it takes.
And the government is pushing for innovation, too. It's wild to think about, right? That these ancient traditions existing alongside cutting-edge technology.
It is, and it's working somehow. Okay, but let's get off the beaten path a little to some of India's less famous spots.
Oh, good idea. There's so much more to discover.
Like Ladakh, this high-altitude desert up in the Himalayas.
Wait, a desert in the Himalayas?
It's called Little Tibet.
That's fascinating. It sounds so different from the India we usually picture.
Totally. Ancient Buddhist monasteries, amazing mountain views.
Ladakh's history and culture must be so unique, being so isolated and close to Tibet.
Definitely. And then on the flip side, there's Chandigarh, this city planned out by Le Corbusier, the famous architect.
Oh, wow. So it's all modern architecture and city planning.
Yeah, and it's known for being green, and people are supposedly happy there, like high scores on happiness surveys.
Another example of that duality we were talking about, ancient civilization, but embracing modern ideas in a big way.
It's like a puzzle, figuring out how it all works together.
I'm ready to try and solve it, though. What's next on our list?
I think it's time to really get into the culture, the heart of what makes India, India.
Sounds good to me. From colorful weddings to, we have to address the caste system too.
Right. That's a whole other layer of complexity we can't shy away from.
Absolutely. It's a lot to unpack, but I think we're up for the challenge.
I agree. Let's do it.
Indian weddings, now those are something else. The colors, the rituals, it's also symbolic.
Yeah, the sources talked about the Mendi ceremony where they do the henna designs on the bride's hands and feet.
It's beautiful, intricate artwork. But it's not just about looks, it's about wishing the couple good luck and blessings.
I've seen pictures. Those henna designs are amazing. And the colors of the clothes are so vibrant, all those reds and golds.
They're not random, Red means love, new beginnings, and the gold represents prosperity, good fortune.
So every detail has a meaning behind it.
It's true. And then there's the dancing. It's not just for fun. It's like a core part of the celebration, brings everyone together.
I love that. The whole community gets involved.
It's a real party atmosphere. But then, we have to shift gears a bit and talk about the caste system.
Right. It's a tough topic, but we can't ignore it when we're talking about India.
Definitely not. It's been a part of Indian society for centuries.
The sources explain how it divides Hindus into these four main categories.
Yeah, based on what your ancestors did, your job, stuff like that.
With the Brahmins, the priests, and scholars at the top.
Right. And it sounds so rigid, like you're born into your place and that's it.
And even though it's officially abolished, like in their constitution,
the sources said it still affects people's lives today, who they interact with, even job opportunities.
It shows how deep those social structures run, even when laws change.
Yeah, it's like tradition has this stronghold, even in a country that's changing so rapidly.
Makes you think, right? Okay, let's move on to something a little different. The Ganges River.
The Ganges. It's more than just a river to Hindus.
Secret, right?
Totally. It represents life, purity, even liberation from the cycle of rebirth.
Millions of people bathe in it, believing it washes away their sins.
And cremations happen there too, the ashes scattered in the water.
Symbolizing the soul's journey to the afterlife. It's powerful stuff.
Really connects their faith to nature in this deep way.
But then there's that other side to the story, the pollution.
Yeah, unfortunately, it's a major issue. Human waste, industrial runoff, all ending up in this sacred river.
It's almost tragic. This clash between faith and what we've done to the environment.
It's a reminder that even the most revered places aren't immune to human impact.
Makes you wonder about sustainability, balancing development with protecting these important sites.
It's a challenge, no doubt. Okay, switching gears again, the sources mentioned a bunch of influential Indians.
Oh yeah, that was a fascinating list. From Gandhi to Bollywood stars.
Even Kalpana Chawla, the Indian-American astronaut.
Shows how diverse India's impact is on the world stage.
Leaders, artists, scientists, all pushing boundaries.
And speaking of symbols, we can't forget the Indian flag.
Saffron, white, and green, with the Ashoka chakra in the center.
It's a striking flag. What do the colors stand for again?
Saffron's courage and sacrifice, white's peace and truth, and green's faith and prosperity, all important values.
And that wheel, the Ashoka chakra, what's the story there?
Well, it represents the Dharma chakra, the wheel of Dharma in Buddhism.
Okay, I'm not super familiar with Buddhism.
Basically, it symbolizes Buddhist teachings, the path to enlightenment.
Yeah.
This emperor, Ashoka, he adopted Buddhism way back in the day.
So it goes way back?
Yeah, like 3rd century BCE. He used this symbol a lot, and eventually it became connected to India's heritage.
That's really cool how a simple symbol can hold so much meaning.
It's powerful stuff. Ready for our next stop? We've got 2 regions I want to highlight, Rajasthan and Gujarat.
Oh yeah, they both sounded interesting, but in different ways.
Rajasthan is all about the land of kings vibe, those amazing forts and palaces, and it's super colorful too.
And Gujarat.
It's more of a blend, traditional, but also very modern. Big business hub driving India's economy.
So 2 very different flavors of India.
That's what makes it so fascinating. And before we forget, we have to talk about the sacred animals in India.
The sources mentioned elephants, monkeys, cows, of course, snakes, even tigers.
It's not just that they're cool animals, it's tied into Hindu beliefs, the respect for all life.
Like seeing the connection between all living things.
Exactly, and that influences everything, not just religion, but how people treat each other, the environment, all of it.
Really makes you think about different ways of seeing the world. But we also have to talk about the not so peaceful side of things.
Oh, you mean the border tensions with China and Pakistan?
Yeah, those conflicts are a big deal, impacting India's future.
It's heavy stuff, rooted in history, territorial disputes, religious differences, it's all tangled up.
The sources focused on Kashmir, that region both India and Pakistan claim.
Right, and then there's the border with China. Things got really heated there a few years back.
It's a reminder that even today, those old conflicts can still flare up.
Yeah, it's a serious situation. And then you add in the fact that both India and Pakistan have nuclear weapons.
That's a whole other level of worry. What do you think? How could this play out? Is there any hope for peace?
It's hard to say, really, especially with Kashmir. It's such a mess of history and religion and politics,
Yeah, so many layers to it.
And then with both countries having nuclear weapons, that just adds a whole other level of danger.
It's scary to think about. I mean, is diplomacy even possible at that point?
It has to be, right? But it takes real commitment from both sides to de-escalate things.
Let's hope they can find a way. Okay, I need to switch gears mentally after that. Let's talk about something a bit more uplifting.
What did you have in mind?
The Himalayas. Those mountains are just so awe-inspiring.
Good choice. They really dominate the landscape up there in northern India.
And they're not just mountains, right? They're like spiritually significant to both Hindus and Buddhists.
Absolutely. They represent India's connection to the ancient world, that sense of grandeur and spirituality.
Can you imagine trekking through those peaks, seeing the sunrise over the snow?
That would be incredible. Just breathing in that fresh mountain air.
It's like a journey for the soul, almost.
And speaking of journeys, the sources mentioned Rishikesh, this town in the foothills of the Himalayas.
Yeah, the yoga capital of the world.
Exactly. People come from all over to study yoga and meditation there.
I've heard about those ashrams, and the whole atmosphere is supposed to be so peaceful.
It's a place to really disconnect from everything and connect with yourself.
I'm feeling calmer just thinking about it. Okay, one last stop on our India adventure. The beaches.
Oh, yeah. I can't forget about those.
From what I read, they're super diverse, too. Like, Goa is known for partying.
Right. Goa's got that Portuguese influence, so it's a bit different.
Laid-back vibe, good for nightlife, all that.
But then you have places like Kerala, which are more about tranquility.
So whether you want to party or just chill by the ocean, India's got you covered.
It's amazing, right? How much variety is packed into this one country.
Seriously, we've covered so much. History, culture, challenges, spiritual stuff, and even the food.
And don't forget the tech boom. We talked about that contrast of ancient and modern.
It's like India defies categorization. It's not just one thing, it's all these things at once.
That's what makes it so fascinating to learn about. It really pushes you to expand your perspective.
I totally agree. So what's the takeaway for our listeners today? We've gone on this deep dive into India, exploring all these different facets.
It's been quite a journey. But the real journey, that starts now for our listeners.
What do you mean?
Well, we've given them a taste, but now it's up to them to decide what interests them most about India.
To find their own unseen destination, so to speak.
Exactly. Will it be the Himalayas, the bustling cities, those peaceful beaches, maybe something spiritual like Rishikesh?
Or maybe they'll be inspired to try cooking some Indian food, or learn a few Hindi phrases.
Who knows? Maybe someone listening will even book a flight and experience it all firsthand.
That would be awesome. This deep dive is just a starting point.
Think of it as a spark. We hope it ignites a curiosity in our listeners to learn more about India, to explore on their own.
And who knows what amazing discoveries they'll make.
And that's what it's all about, right? Keep exploring, keep learning, keep diving deep into this incredible world we live in.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Until next time.